Well, you may have already been with us this evening. Me and Ryan sat here to do a live watch along of the game. Safe to say it wasn't the most enthralling of encounters, but we managed to make it through the 90 minutes anyway, Ryan, and we managed to make it back here for the post-match reaction. If you haven't already been able to see, it's me and Ryan McGinley here to cover what was quite a boring game. Now, normally for these live reaction things or reactions to games, I would title it the 3 things we learned. We would do the 3 things we learned series, and we would go through that. But I'm going to keep that until the competitive games come along. It is only a friendly, so let's just have a bit of a chilled conversation. Ryan, Bristol City 0, Celtic 0, one for the ages, would you say?
It's definitely one I won't be looking back on anytime soon. The only thing that I can say is that we've kept our first clean sheet under Ange Postecoglou, so that's a plus. We didn't concede today, which is great. I thought the passing was good for the majority of the game. We just couldn't get that final bit of luck in front of goal. Then, I mean, we done that for 45, 50, 60 minutes, but I think the constant subs took the sort of life out of the game, took the fluidity out of the game along with injuries. And then for the past 20, 25 minutes, it was a bit of a boring game, but it's more minutes in the legs, and it's stuff that we can work on.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't the worst thing we've ever had to watch or ever see. There was certainly positives and things to build on, and I think some consistencies from the last couple of games too. Certainly things we have to work on as well on the flip side of that. But we'll go through the game from start to finish. You've already mentioned the sort of injuries that occurred in the game. We can go right back to the injury that happened before the game as well. We were kind of shocked to see that Barkas was dropped from the team last minute. Scott Bain came in. So we don't have any luck from this game, Ryan, because we've lost Bain with what looks to be maybe broken fingers, which is, for a goalkeeper, of course, not ideal. So we've lost Barkas. Johnson went down with what looked a hamstring injury. So Johnson had to go off. And then Karamoko Dembele was absolutely obliterated from behind in a pre-season friendly game. These are 3 guys who I think, well, let's off. God, cameras went off right at the right point, hasn't it? It'll come back on, don't worry. But with Dembele and Johnston, what we've seen in the kind of opening portion of the game was some really nice movement that involved a lot of the wingers. And with those guys going off injured, it really took that kind of sting out the game for Celtic, didn't it?
Yeah, it definitely did. It took away the width that was working for the first portion of the game. It was another great chance to see Mikey Johnson sort of stake a claim in the team, and Dembele as well. And now that both of them are potentially injured, I don't know whose one is worse. I'd be guessing it was Mikey Johnson going by history. But it wasn't ideal. It took away the sort of width in the game. And it doesn't help both of their chances, because obviously Mikey Johnson's had numerous chances to sort of stake his claim, and then he's got injured, and then we've just signed a new right winger today in Dembele's place, so this was his sort of chance to show that he is ready for the first team. And it's totally unfortunate that he gets a bad or he has to get taken off an injury, but it was an absolutely shocking tackle from Casey Palmer. That sort of tackle has no place in football, never mind in pre-season games. It was an absolutely awful tackle. It wasn't going for the ball at all. It didn't look like, and it was just disappointing, to be honest.
Well, first half, we started well, as we said, with those guys in the park, but we still continued to do well, I think, throughout the first half. There was a real feeling from what we were doing and the way we were moving the ball and such that we could score a goal. We were going to break that deadlock. We didn't quite get there. Bristol City went on the back foot, playing what looked to be a line of 5 at the back. They had those 2 centre defensive midfielders playing really deep and really tight with that back line. It made it difficult to break it down, but Celtic were moving it about well, and I think what we just lacked, of course, was that chance in the final third. It always got that little bit too congested for Celtic. They couldn't quite get a shot away. There was a couple of chances here and there, but we just really couldn't find our footing in the final third to get a chance off.
Yep. It maybe shows that we maybe do need to go back into the transfer window and get a more mobile striker, because I know Ayeti's a good sort of poacher, but I know he can move about a wee bit more than he did last season, but he's still not entirely mobile. You wouldn't say he's pacey or anything, so we might need a sort of quicker guy to sort of get on the end of chances. That can be something for the scouts and that to look at, whether that be Nisbet or someone else. But no, it was Ayeti didn't have that many chances anyway, to be honest, in the game at all. It was a game with so few chances. But I thought the standouts were the midfield again, Turnbull and McGregor and Sorrow, they all looked like they were comfortable. And then obviously Liam Shaw coming on the second half in the midfield, it showed that we do have a lot of strength in the midfield, and it shows that they're already buying into Ange's methods.
Yeah, and look, I think that's take positives away. I still feel like, and we were talking a lot about it in that watch along first sort of 5, 10, 20 minutes and whatnot, there did seem to be more of an identity in what we're doing. There was a collective sort of goal as to what we're doing with the ball and moving up the park with it. Now, as I always say, and I'll say it one more time and before we go any further, it's a pre-season friendly. Take everything, whether it be positive or negative, with a pinch of salt. But there just seems to be more of an idea, and we've seen that throughout that first half. And I think as well, and we talked about it, as you said at the start, we finally kept a clean sheet. There seemed to be a more kind of organised back line. There was still a couple of panicky moments from set pieces, but you know, as much as we moan about Ralston and maybe we have a wee moan about Taylor, I think especially with the centre halves today, seemed like they were confident in what they were doing. They looked strong enough, and they managed to keep out Bristol, who only really did rack up one sort of dangerous chance in that first half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can always take the positives from enough in each, but I think at the same time, looking back on it, the amount of subs that were getting put in the game, it was almost constant, the amount of subs in the second half especially. There'd be no fluidity to the game whatsoever, so that's just what happens in these pre-season games. Sometimes are really good and sometimes are really not good. That's just so happened to be the latter. But I'm impressed we get the clean sheet. I'm impressed that all the defenders look comfortable in the way that Ange's playing, are comfortable to an extent. They might not be good enough for the team, such as I would say Taylor and Ralston, but it's good that they're comfortable in the system and they can be called upon.
Just in contrast to that, we had £2 from Lawrence who says Greg Taylor was immense in my opinion.
I'm not too sure about that. He did put in a couple of good balls, but it wasn't really that sort of game that anyone was really outstanding, I don't think. I thought it was a very average game. It was more like a training exercise when it came into the second half. So there's not really much you can take from it apart from the fact that we kept a clean sheet and we've got more minutes in the legs, really.
Second half, we'll go on to that. It was a bit more bland before we come into the big discussion surrounding what we've seen and maybe what it means moving forward, especially into next week, which is massive for Celtic. The second half was lifeless, Ryan. It was a bit of a drag to watch. Our eyes were going towards the end. The yawns were coming out. I think both teams had really, as you've already mentioned the phrase, treated it a bit like an exercise, a training exercise rather than the game in the second half. There was, of course, Bristol made their whole team change. We made a lot of changes. There was no real flow to it. I think Bristol started to get into it a little bit more. Celtic did deal with that well at points, I thought, but it was all in all a poor second half, really.
It was, and I'm in danger of repeating myself with this sort of fluidity. I've mentioned that word about 5 or 6 times.
It's difficult to come out with like different facts and opinions and everything about a game that really presented none.
and a sort of in a league game, at least you would have something to talk about in terms of gaining a point in a game like this, or what it means for the table. But in a pre-season game, enough in each. There's not even a goal to talk about or anything. It's more the stories and what happened in the game with regards to injuries than anything else, which is disappointing. You see 2 guys going off injured, and then you see one guy go off before the game's even started, and then 2 during the game. So it's a bit of a blow for already a paper thin squad, especially out wide.
And finally, before we move on to the bigger picture, we have seen now on 3 occasions a lot more of our younger players at Celtic. More players got chances today. You can maybe throw Welsh into that bracket still. I mean, I know he's kind of established himself as a squad player, but you can throw Welsh in. We've seen Montgomery for a large portion of the game. We've seen Helder come on late. We've seen Robertson. We've seen Henderson. We've seen Moffat. We've seen a lot of these younger guys get chances today, Ryan, and they still, to me, are improving on an opinion that they've already kind of established the first couple of games.
Yeah, it's good for them to get some game time. It shows that there is a clear pathway now from the development side to the first team, or the coach to the first team. It's good that Ange's given them that sort of platform to go out and show their skills. It shows if they're old enough, if they're old enough, if they're good enough, they're old enough. I couldn't even say that right there. It's good to see these guys, and you're just hoping that these guys can make the sort of steps during the season, that they're there to be called upon if an injury crisis does happen. But it's good experience for them. A couple of nice touches from Moffat. Murray was good when he came on as well.
Murray.
Aye, and Robertson, he looked good 2 years ago, and he still looks the same. It's good that he got more game time last season, away on loan to the two teams down south. But aye, it was a good exercise for the boys, definitely.
And just to kind of wrap things up, Celtic did complete one signing today. They managed to get Leah Labada in from Israel. They look close to signing Starfelt of Ruben Kazan in Russia. And there's still all the talk about Soppy, of course, but Celtic really do. And I think these games are showing that we need depth. We need quality and depth. We need quality in that first team. Tony Ralston cannot be starting for me. We need a centre half as well, I think, alongside Starfelt. We need wingers. We've just watched two of our wingers go off with injury, in fact. So we need wingers. Celtic need to get a move on this transfer window. That's the bigger picture now. And I think these games, for as much as there's been positives to take from it and identifications of good things, it's certainly shown that there has to be work. There has to be things done, Ryan.
Yep, definitely. I think there are some positions that we need to address as a matter of urgency now, rather than like we would prefer to have players in some positions, but there are some gaping holes in this team, especially at right back and left back, I would say. We need players that are able to bomb down the wing and sort of inverted as well, because that's the way Ange likes to play. So it'd be nice to see some movement in those two positions, or even giving Bowley another chance, because I know he's more explosive than Taylor. He'd probably fit in better, but we just need to see movement. We need to see guys coming in the door. I know we've got one player today, but we need 2, 3, 4 before we can even start thinking about assembling our best 11. I would say there are some positions that are just crying out for reinforcements, and we need to get our move on.
Well, I don't think we went for 12 minutes. It's really all we need for a 0-0 pre-season friendly before we do shut off for the night and finally give ourselves a bit of a rest. I need to pay you a wage for this one. Any final thoughts at all about our draw with Bristol City tonight?
It's a clean sheet, and it was good to see Celtic play again. Obviously, it's better than loads of international football, you could say, or international football apart from the Euros and that. But that's one of those ones that I'll forget about in a couple of days, and we'll just move on to the next one. And looking forward to getting back to Celtic Park on Saturday to watch us play at Celtic Park. Obviously, don't have a ticket, but it'll be good to see us playing there.
Yeah. Well, that'll about do it. If you have been watching either the watch along or a match reaction, thank you very much for tuning in all night. It's been an absolute pleasure for both me and Ryan to entertain you this evening, if I can use the word entertain. If you haven't already, make sure to hit like and subscribe. If you're watching this as it's uploaded as a video, make sure to do that. Also, Ryan, thanks very much for joining me all evening, and thank you in the chat as well. And from us, we'll see you all next.